Resource planning. Resource planning is a way, or it's a technique, or is a skill for proper utilization of the resources. Resource planning is a judicious way of utilization or use of the resources. Like, it is a way that how, if we will use the resource in this way, that means the development will achieve. In case of the resource planning, there are different stages of the resource planning. The first, second and the third, and that's why the resource planning, it's called a complex process. Basically, in the first step, it's called the step or the stage of the identification as well as the listing of the resource. It means that in the first stage is related with the identification of a resource in a particular region or inventory of the resource in a particular region. And for this, we will do the survey, we will do the mapping, we will use some measurement qualities, and the quantities of the resources are some important activities undertaken at this stage only. Now, in the second stage, we are having the planning for exploitation. In the case of the planning of exploitation, the development of the planning structure is required, where we will take help with the suitable technology, skill and institutional setup. And the third stage, match the resource development plan with national development plans. In the third stage, we need to plan the matching, that whatever resource plan we have done, we need to match that with the national development plans only. Now, the importance of resource planning, or why we need to plan resource. It is very important for us to balance the development of a country, or it is necessary, a balanced development is necessary in every country. In case of our country, India, we are having some regions which are having very high amount of the resources. There are some regions are there where very poor or less amount of the resources are present. Like in case of the Rajasthan, if I will take the example, Rajasthan having very rich solar and the wind energy, but there are some regions where you will find that maybe the other energy resources are missing. Suppose Rajasthan solar wind energy is very high, but petroleum, coal, this kind of the energy resources are not present. Suppose if you take the example of a state, Arunachal having a sufficient amount of the water, but other kind of the energy resources or other kind of the resources are not present over there. So any region of our area is not self-sufficient. Some regions are having very good amount of the things, some region doesn't have. So to maintain the balance between the region, we need to plan the resource. As well as we are actually wasting the resource. The people, those who are having more amount of the resource in their hand, they are actually wasting the resource. To reduce the wastage of the resource, or to reduce the wastage of the resource, we need a planning. With the proper planning only, we can solve the problem of the wastage of the resource. Environmental pollution. In case of the environmental pollution also can be reduced by the resource planning. Like last day we have seen that due to the overuse of the resources, the ecological crisis or different kind of the environmental problem arises. So if we will use the resource in a proper manner, so we can avoid this pollution also. As well as people having a tendency always over exploit the resources. If we are having the proper planning to use the resource, so this over exploitation also can be solved. So because of this reasons only, we need a resource plan, or this is the importance of the resource planning. Now the next thing that we are having, that is the resource conservation. Obviously, resource conservation is also a very important part of the resource planning process only. We need to conserve the resource to meet the present need of the society, as well as we need to conserve the resource for the future generation too. In case of the resource conservation, we know many resources are present which are the renewable resource. There are so many resources which are the non-renewable or exhaustible resource also. if we can conserve them for a longer period of the time, the conservation of the resource will help to reduce the wastage, as well as it will help to meet the a country's economic progress. In case of the conservation of the resource strongly related with the environmental or to protect our environment also. So basically we need to conserve the resource. There are certain reasons are there. We need to meet the need of the present generation, as well as we need to meet the need of the, or we need to store something for our future generation. That's why we need resource conservation. As well as many resources, which resources are the non-renewable resource or which resources are exhaustible for a longer period of the time. If it will finish, we will not get them. We need to conserve those resources, because without these resources we can't live. And conservation of the resource help us to reduce the wastage also. It helps us for the economic progress of the country also. So in this way, resource conservation can help us to protect the environment. Now the next thing is there, that is the Gandhiji's idea on the resource conservation. What is the Gandhiji's idea on the resource conservation? The Gandhiji's idea on the resource conservation, according to Gandhiji, he said that there is enough for everybody's need, but not for anybody's greed. What does it mean? He said that greedy and selfish individual and their exploitive nature of the modern technology are the root cause of the depletion of the resources. There is enough resource in our earth that can meet the need of everyone. But if you want to satisfy your greed, there is no resource. 1 marks question come. What is Gandhiji's concept about the resource conservation? So this line you need to write. Or if it will come for the 3 marks, discuss the Gandhiji's ideas on the resource conservation. You need to write the full. He was against of the mass production, but he wanted to replace it by the production by the masses only. So from here the question comes, what is the Gandhiji's thought about the resource conservation? As well as the question comes, suppose this line could be given to you, there is enough for everybody's need, not for anybody's greed. In this way the line could be there and they can ask you for explanation of that particular line. Is it okay, girls? Okay. Now the land resources. Basically we are having 3 kind of the land resources: the plains, the plateaus and the mountains. Already you all know the percentage. In case of the plain land we are having 43%. In case of the mountain we are having 30% area under the mountain, as well as we are having 27% of the land under the plateau area. What is the importance of the plain areas? The plain areas are important because it supports the natural vegetation, wildlife, human life, as well as we are doing any kind of the economic activity over here. Plain areas are always suitable for making roads, making industries, for agricultural purpose. That's why huge amount of the population are staying in the plain lands of our country. Whereas in case of the plateau, the plateaus are the mineral rich region of a country, as well as you will find the variety of the flora and fauna also present in the plateau area. And the last one, that is the mountain area, having only 27% of the land mass. But in case of the mountains also, we are having the biodiversity, as well as we are having in the mountain areas the huge amount of the tourists. Every year they comes to the mountain areas for the tourist attraction place actually. So it helps the economy of